Okay, as promised, it is 3 o'clock on the dot here in New York. I'm David Dodge. I am the executive editor of Gays with Kids, and you are joining us for our webinar on becoming a dad as a single queer man. So I'm really excited about this particular topic. We've been celebrating single parenthood all week at Gays with Kids. So this past Sunday is National Single Parents Day. So we've kind of blown it up into a week's worth of events. It's one of our most active communities at Gays with Kids. So if you're not already following our single gay dads group on Facebook, make sure you find us there. It's our biggest online presence in terms of groups, and it's growing every day. And that's because something interesting that I've found as I was doing some research for our events this week is that there are more single parents raising kids in the United States than any other country in the world. And that is partly because we don't have the same sort of like traditions of extended families raising children together, but it's also because in the US, it's becoming increasingly acceptable to be raising children on our own. So no longer is it necessary to be waiting for Mr. Right in order to take the plunge into parenthood. And this is true for straight people, gay people, lesbians, queer people generally. People are just recognizing that there are new and different non-traditional ways to raise families. And as we often are, LGBTQ people are at the forefront of making these changes happen. So just a little bit of history about Gays with Kids. I like to just preface before we get too deep into these webinars, in case this is the first interaction you're having with us. But we were started 7 years ago. We're actually celebrating our 7-year anniversary this month as well. And we started out as kind of a place to increase the visibility of gay parents and help kind of inspire men that are interested in fatherhood to show that it's possible by profiling the families of people who have done it and the obstacles they've overcome to get there. Because as you know, or you wouldn't be on this webinar with us, fatherhood isn't something that can just easily happen for LGBTQ people, and particularly if you're single. But what started as a place to, again, just share adorable family photos on our Instagram page and write inspiring family profiles online has, over the course of the years, turned into something that has where our community has really started to ask for more of us. So we've done a great job inspiring people, but now people want the help that they need in order to become dads via the paths that are available to us. So that's namely adoption, foster care, surrogacy, and co-parenting arrangements. So over the last year or so, we've really tried to slow down, reach out to experts in the country that not only are LGBTQ friendly, but LGBTQ competent. These are people that have years worth of experience helping our community become dads and navigate these very difficult, very expensive, often paths to becoming parents. So we're very excited that we are now in the midst of unrolling all of these new resources. So if you are unfamiliar with the resources we have on our website, please do go to gayswithkids.com and go to our Become a Dad section, where every week we're rolling out new resources, videos, articles about how to navigate these processes of parenthood. And these webinar series that we're doing are some of the best and most helpful options that we're putting forward, because it really does give our audience the chance to connect directly with experts in these fields. You're welcome to ask questions as specific to your own case as you would like. So just before we get into the presentation, I'll also let you know that you are free to ask questions at any point that you have them using the Q&A function on your the top of the bottom of your screen, or the chat function if you prefer to chat me or the panelists directly. I'll be accumulating these over the course of the half-an-hour presentation, and then we'll get through as many of them as we can towards the end. If we're unable to get to your question, or if we're unable to answer it sufficiently, you can email us at dads@gayswithkids.com. I'll repeat that several times throughout the webinar as well. And we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Like I said, we have a great team of LGBTQ family planning experts that are here ready and eager to help answer your questions. So with that, you will be hearing today from Bonnie Sharp, who's the Quality Assurance Manager at Extraordinary Families, which is a foster care agency based in Los Angeles County. You'll be hearing from Daniel Scora, who is a reproductive endocrinologist at the Fertility Specialist of Texas, and Sean Huiet, who's a dad through adoption. And we're going to hear about his story. So before I hand it over to them, what are we going to be covering today? So we're going to be covering the 4 paths that are available to queer men primarily. So that's, again, we're going to go through surrogacy, adoption, foster care, and co-parenting arrangements. We're going to go through the different considerations that you might have to think about in embarking on any of these paths as a single person versus what were you to be in a relationship. We're going to talk about some of the advantages to being a single parent, and also obviously some of the challenges that come around with that. Then we also want to leave you with some next steps if you're eager to take this plunge and ready. So the short answer, can single queer men become parents via these 4 avenues? And the answer is absolutely yes. So again, we have the highest rate of children living with single parents. And this is increasingly something that we're choosing for ourselves because we're used to having to function just generally outside of the confines of a traditional heteronormative family structure. And again, so many, this is true across all different sorts of parents, but this is increasingly true within the LGBTQ community. So some of the benefits are is that it's just becoming more normalized and less demonized. But for generations, if you were a single parent, it was something that happened to you by circumstance for the most part, and wasn't something to be celebrated. And that's not the case anymore. So every year we're seeing more people embark on their own. And as you'll learn through this webinar, when we say you're a single parent, I don't think you're going to meet any single parent that's doing this 100% on their own. There's different ways to build up community around yourself in order to make sure that you are getting the support that you need as a single parent in raising your children. But again, just the idea that you don't have to be waiting for that one person to enter your life, that there really is no reason that a relationship, a marriage needs to be a prerequisite to fulfilling your dream of parenthood. And one of the benefits is that you're the sole cook in the kitchen. You get to make all the decisions. So some of the challenges of becoming a single queer dad is that these paths are not cheap, most of them. You'll learn that there are some avenues to doing this more affordably than others, but this is expensive for queer couples. It's so it can be particularly expensive if you're trying to shoulder all these costs on your own. So again, just like it is an advantage to be able to create this community of people around you to help raise your family, this is also, it's a challenge though. It's something that I think in any of these paths, all of the experts today will stress that this is something that's critical, that you build a really strong support network, and that that's going to be absolutely necessary in order for you to be the best parent that you can and raise the kids that you want to raise. So, just like it is a plus that you could have all of the rights and decisions and responsibilities of raising a child, that can also be a challenge at times to not be able to, go ask your other dad. That's not an option if you're obviously doing this as a single parent. It's not up here, but dating obviously can become more complicated if you are single and entering the dating pool with the family already created. So these, again, we're about to get into each of these paths where we'll spend about 4 to 5 minutes per path in talking about the different avenues available. So we'll be talking for a slide on surrogacy, adoption, fostering and co-parenting. And just before I hand it over to Dr. Skora, who's going to walk us through surrogacy, again, if you have questions as they occur to you, feel free to plug them into the Q&A function or chat us, and I will be collecting them as we go along. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Skora.
Hey everyone, as David mentioned, my name is Dr. Daniel Skora. I'm a fertility specialist of Texas and located in Dallas, Texas. And we have a large practice dealing with LGBTQ patients. I, as a member of the community, find this to be a really important part of my practice. And one of my passions is helping people in my community to be able to become dads. I would say about a quarter of the patients that I see for third party, which is what we consider whenever someone needs to use someone that isn't their partner to have a child, are single men. And so it's getting more and more, actually, as David did kind of say during his talk. And there are some special things associated with doing this as a single father that make it a positive and a negative. So, in terms of just the whole process of using an egg donor and a surrogate, the nice thing about it is that you have a biological connection to your child, which some people find important and others don't. You often will build relationships with your surrogate. And the egg donor, sometimes it depends on whether it's an anonymous egg donor or not. And you have kind of a team that helps you along this path. And you actually don't have to decide whose sperm to use because there's only one person involved in this. Now, to more specifics of a single dad, the positive is often when I'm dealing with a male couple, they want to do what's called a split insemination, meaning they want to both be able to create embryos during the IVF process. So that they both can eventually have a genetically related child. When we're dealing with a single father, there's a lot more choice associated with that. So generally I tell my couples, we recommend a fresh egg donation from an egg donor because you will get more eggs, you're getting more bang for your buck. But when we're dealing with a single dad, there's really more options. One is buying frozen eggs from an egg bank, a national egg bank, or from an egg bank associated with your fertility center. Fertility Specialists of Texas, we have our own egg bank that we are creating. So we have eggs that are ready to go. And so you buy lots of 6 to 8 eggs. And, for a couple, that's not reasonable. But for a single dad, that is something that is a possibility. Another option in certain centers is to split the IVF cycle with either another couple or with the center itself. As I mentioned, we're at Fertility Specialists of Texas creating our own egg bank. And as such, we're encouraging single dads, whether they be a heterosexual couple or LGBTQ, to split the cycle of a fresh egg donor with the center. And that allows us to build up eggs in our egg bank and give you the eggs that you want, but not have like 30 or 40 eggs, which a single dad doesn't need. So the other thing to talk about is the gestational carrier. Now, this can be very expensive, this whole process. If you're paying out of pocket for an egg donor and a gestational carrier, as it says on the slide, you could be looking at well over $100,000 for the entire process. Obviously, buying eggs might make that a little bit cheaper. Splitting the cycle might make that a little bit cheaper. If you have a friend who's willing to donate eggs to you, that can make it a lot less expensive as well, because you don't have to pay a compensation for that person. And the same goes for the person carrying the baby. A lot of my single dads have a friend who is offered to be their gestational carrier and not demand, the compensation that often can be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for a gestational carrier. And if that is possible, then the kind of outlook in terms of price can really come down for you. But there's a lot of other things that are associated with that some people don't want, like a known egg donor. There's other, kind of relationship, psychological issues associated with that you might not be interested in. The same thing with a gestational carrier. If it's someone that likely that person's going to want some sort of relationship moving down through the process. Obviously, this is a long process. I normally tell my intended fathers that it can take anywhere between 6 months and a year from start to finish. The biggest limiting factor generally is getting your gestational carrier lined up, because that's a pretty limited resource. But generally, it's a pretty easy journey for our couples or single dads at Fertility Specialists of Texas. I obviously can go very in depth into the medical aspects, but really for most of our single dads, it involves one visit to our office, and then that's it until the baby is born. And if you live internationally, that even might mean no visits to our office. We have clinics around the world where we can do everything we need and then ship your sperm to our clinic. So there's actually no need for a visit before the baby is born. So I'm sure I'll be getting more questions about the specifics of the medical aspects of this during the Q&A. But for now, I think the highlights are kind of the genetic relationship to your child, your ability to kind of be more in charge of the situation and starting from an embryo, really.
Thank you so much, Dr. Skora. Okay, so I'm going to be filling in as our adoption expert today. But again, if there's any questions specifically that you have that I'm unable to answer, we will make sure that we connect you to one of our amazing adoption experts following the presentation. So an obvious benefit for any adoptive parent, whether you're single or not, is the ability to provide a loving home to a child in need. And in the profiles of adoptive dads that we have covered online, and our gay dad through adoption, who's on the panel today, will be able to speak much more to this than I will be able to. But oftentimes the people that you work with, the professionals, even the birth parents and the families, become part of an extended network that can be particularly important if you're a single parent going through this process, as they can provide support and a loving network of people that are there to help you. So one of the challenges of adoption is that if you're specifically interested in adopting a newborn, so we're going to be getting into foster care adoption in the following slide. So that's a very specific and different process. There is some overlap. But if you're interested specifically in adopting a newborn and being matched with a birth family, it is not, people are often surprised to figure out how expensive it is. This isn't something that happens overnight, but there are medical costs, there are legal fees, there's adoption agency fees, all sorts of things that go into this process. And that leads to a surprisingly expensive journey. So adoption in the US, when you're adopting a newborn, ranges anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000. And that depends on a wide range of considerations, including where you are in the country. Again, like the particular needs of your birth mother as she's going through her pregnancy, legal fees. Again, adoption agencies vary in how they structure their fees. And so if you're interested in adoption and surrogacy, I should say we have a whole webinar series that walks people through all of the different considerations for these particular paths. We go much more in depth into all of these considerations. So definitely look on our site, gazewithkids.com, go to our events page, and you'll see a whole series of stuff that will go into the costs, that will go into the matching process, all of that good stuff. But so for the sake of this, just know that, again, if you're taking this on as a single parent, that it can be an expensive process. And this is true, again, for anyone that's pursuing adoption, not just single parents, but something that people need to know going into this is that adoption with when you're hoping to adopt a newborn is a birth parent driven process. It's something that you need to be following the lead of the pregnant person. And that is how it should be. So she will have an opportunity to change her mind at some point in the process. And you need to go into this with an open heart and mind, and know that, if ultimately that is what she decides to do is parent, that is the right outcome in that instance. It can be very difficult, not to downplay that, but it's an emotional journey going through this oftentimes. And so this is, again, why it's so important to have a good, strong network of people going through the adoption process, in that if you encounter those sorts of bumps along the road, if your birth parents decide to parent ultimately, that can be an emotional part of the journey for you. And it's really important to make sure that you have the right support system around you to handle those bumps along the road. So I would, there's a lot more to go into in adoption, but because we have these experts on, and we have Sean that will be able to speak to this more thoroughly and about his adoptive process, I'm going to pause there. Again, we will take any and all questions you have on the adoption process in the Q&A, but I'm going to now turn it over to Bonnie Sharp at Extraordinary Families, who's going to walk us through the difference with when you're adopting as a single person in the foster care system versus an infant.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Bonnie Sharp, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm the Quality Assurance Manager with Extraordinary Families, which is a nonprofit foster care and adoption agency. We serve all of Los Angeles County, and I've been with Extraordinary Families for 7 years and in the field of child welfare for 11 years. Adopting from foster care, it's certainly a wonderful way to both help a child and also grow your family, but there's this old persistent myth that you must be a part of a stereotypical two-parent household to be approved to adopt from foster care, and this just simply isn't true. And there are many benefits for single parents who adopt from foster care, but I do think it is important to first talk a little bit about the foster care system, which basically just refers to the various services that are designed to ensure children's safety and well-being. There are more than 400,000 children in the foster care system nationally, and there are 100,000 of them right now waiting to be adopted. They enter foster care through no fault of their own because they've been abused, neglected, or abandoned, and they remain in care temporarily with resource parents, which are foster parents, or relatives until they're able to safely return to their birth parents, are adopted, or age out of the system and transition into adulthood. How foster care services are delivered, it actually varies from state to state. So here in California, where I'm at, county placement agencies, they either use their own licensed homes or foster family agencies, or FFAs, for the care of children in foster care. And FFAs are typically nonprofits engaged in the recruiting, certifying, and training of resource parents, finding temporary permanent families for children, and providing both children and resource families with ongoing professional support and advocacy while the child is in care. And this additional support, it's one of the greatest benefits of adopting from foster care, which David had mentioned. It's especially true for single parents. So when you work with an FFA like Extraordinary Families, you become a part of a strong network of child welfare professionals and like-minded resource parents. And you're essentially never alone when it comes to the inevitable moments of concern that are really just a part and parcel of parenting a child in foster care. At Extraordinary Families, all of our families, they're assigned experienced master level social workers who provide them with resources and support and advocacy. And we offer our family support groups and peer mentors. And we have a family support specialist who's also available for individual consultation and individual support. Our families have access to our staff for assistance as needed, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and more. So, Finances are often a concern for single parents. David mentioned this also, but it's also another huge benefit when you adopt from foster care because it really costs little to no money. Adopting from foster care, it may cost perhaps a couple hundred to a couple thousand. It just depends on where you live. In general, you can expect some incidental fees, some of which may be reimbursed after the adoption is actually finalized. And in some states, the home study is free, the legal fees for adoption may be covered, and families may qualify even for a monthly adoption stipend. And all resource families actually receive a monthly stipend prior to adoption too, and this can alleviate some of those financial pressures as a single parent and help cover the cost of things like childcare or clothing and food. Children adopted from foster care also receive health coverage under Medicaid until they're 18, and in some cases, it can last until they're 21. And they may also be eligible for free college tuition or various grants and vouchers to offset the cost of higher education. But adopting from foster care is certainly without challenges. It's not without challenges, sorry. First, most importantly, the primary goal of foster care is always to reunify children with their birth parents. Resource parents, they must support reunification in the child's relationship to their birth family, and this requires a commitment to include a child as a member of your family, creating a sense of safety and belonging, whether that child remains in your care for just one day or for lifelong. And second, all of our children in care, they've experienced some form of trauma. And so parents who adopt from foster care, they need to receive certain training so that they can understand the effects of trauma and how to actually help children heal. And trauma, the effects of trauma, it varies depending on the child and the type of trauma that the child experienced. And it can impact how the child behaves, and it can be confusing or distressing for our parents, and it can impact the child long term. But the very good news, I always say children are amazingly resilient. And so if you're understanding and you can provide the care and the proper treatment, children can and absolutely do heal and thrive. And lastly, even though you will have a lot of support when you work with an FFA like Extraordinary Families, David mentioned this, you still need to make sure you have a really solid support system outside of the professionals you're working with. Being a single parent, it's challenging in and of itself. You don't have another pair of hands to help get things done. You don't have someone to pass the baton to when you're emotionally tapped out. You don't have the option to just stay in bed when you're feeling sick. Being a single parent, though, while also navigating the child welfare system, it can be even more challenging. You have to adjust to becoming a parent overnight. You have to process those hard stories that you're going to hear of your child's past, manage court hearings and therapeutic services and meetings with social workers and your child's attorney and more. So really, to be successful, you need to shore up your family, your close friends, community members to help you on this journey. You need to make sure you gather a list of approved babysitters and respite care providers because you're going to need them. Make sure your support system also includes other resource parents. This is really important because only other resource parents are going to truly understand your experiences and help you process some of the difficult days you're sure to experience. Adopting from foster care as a single parent is definitely challenging for sure, but it's not impossible. And I'm sure you're going to hear that from our other panelist who's going to be sharing his story. It's, I think, probably one of the most, if not the most rewarding life experience that you can experience. And I just like to say, remember, there's 100,000 children in care right now who are waiting to be adopted. So I really strongly encourage any of you joining us today to consider opening your heart and your home to a child in need of a forever family.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Okay, so our last path to parenthood we're going to cover is what we are calling co-parenting. So this is an attempt to kind of cover a range of different kind of novel ways that especially LGBTQ people are starting to form families. And that is often outside the confines of a romantic partnership. So this is my path to parenthood. So I am a known donor to a lesbian couple who are very good friends of mine. And with them, I have had 3 children. So this is becoming much more common. So I can't count the number of gay male friends of mine in particular who are now being asked by lesbian couples, or they're starting to approach lesbian friends of theirs or straight friends of theirs because again, people just are sick of waiting around for Mr. or Mrs. Right, and they're wanting to get started on their parenting journey. And that again is relationships no longer a prerequisite. But even if you are in a relationship, there's examples of co-parenting arrangements between a gay couple and a lesbian couple who come together to decide to parent together. So all different sorts of platonic co-parenting arrangements are on the rise in the United States. And again, LGBTQ people are really kind of leading the charge here. We're starting to hear about this becoming much more common between a straight male friend and a straight female friend. So I really do truly believe, just based on anecdotal evidence of the number of people that reach out to me to talk about my journey through this process. I think a generation from now, this is going to be a much more common way for people to form families. So, and like surrogacy, this is a way, if it is important to you, to have a biological connection to your child. And even if you do this as a single person, so I feel like in my arrangement, for instance, we call it. It's not so much co-parenting as in that my friends are doing 98% of the work. I'm very involved and I'm a part of their lives, but this is, I'm more of a donor than I am a parenting figure. But I am there when they need me to be. I can go up there on the fly to babysit when they need me to, and to be just a presence in the kids' lives. And I think no matter who you talk to about this, everyone will say the more loving adults you can have in a kid's life, the better. So these arrangements really do allow for some unique ways, especially for single people, to start forming families if those options are available to you. So one of the really interesting things about this arrangement, because it's so new, that there's some startups that are starting to pop up that are trying to match not just lesbian and gay men together, but men and women, single men and women, or lesbian couples and gay couples with others that are interested in doing this. And it's basically like a dating site for people that are interested in forming families. We don't know enough about these at Gays with Kids yet to really make a strong endorsement of any of them, but we are very interested in it, and we're kind of following along as these become more common. And if anyone's interested in those, you can message me privately. I'm happy to send them along. But the flip side of that is, because this is so new, the laws state to state really have not caught up to kind of the new ways that we're forming our families. So it is still the case where in most instances, a very, very rare set of instances, is there allowed to be more than two people on a birth certificate, for instance. So if you're going into this arrangement as a single person with a couple, one of you is going to be left off the birth certificate, most likely. So that means you're not going to have the same legal ties or responsibilities to your child. In a sort of instance like mine, that was an easy decision to make, because they are my friends are the primary caregivers of the children. But in a lot of cases of co-parenting, the intention is for it to be an equal split of responsibility. And in that case, it can be difficult to try to go into this knowing that you might not have the same sort of legal protections. And that is why it is really incredibly important that you don't go into this without doing your research, without doing it with a lawyer that's very versed in family law in the states that you are in. Because you really do need to rely on the strength of your relationship. So you'll want to draft a legal contract that will stipulate all the different eventualities should they arise. But the truth is, because this is so new, these contracts are often not very enforceable in court. So really, it's the strength of the relationships that you have are really what's going to be the most important and what's going to sustain you. This is part of the reason why these matching sites online are great and really novel. But I think. Even if you're meeting a stranger on the internet, it's, like when my friends asked me, I took 7 months to think about it, to talk about it, to process it with them, to process it with, my barista at the coffee shop. Literally, it was, I took the time I needed to make sure I felt completely comfortable going into this. And so, no matter how this person, they could be your best friend in the world, they could be a stranger on the internet, but you need to go into this with a very strong foundation. But happy to take any questions on that arrangement as well. But now I'm going to shut up and let our esteemed gay dad on the panel talk us through his journey, which I'm very excited to hear about. So I'm just going to, without further ado, hand it over to Sean.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Very excited to be here and just give you a little quick rundown of my story. And then I feel when I've done a couple things like this, the questions really kind of help open it up a little bit. I am a Division I head volleyball coach at Texas State University. I just actually did a TED Talk talking a little bit about my journey and talking about I struggled a lot with coming out because I didn't think that I could be a dad. One of the things I wanted my entire life was to be a father. And so I really struggled with that side of it. And so I was very fortunate, and I believe that she's on this webinar. A friend of mine from college started her own adoption agency called Choice Network in Columbus, Ohio. And through the process and telling her like my dreams and goals, and it was always, you know, be a Division I volleyball coach, do this, and being a dad was at the top of that list. And you know, the fears and the struggles of thinking, you know, I had to be married or I had to be with someone. She really helped sit down and walk me through the process of how single gay men can adopt. And I will say it's been, I think someone said it before, the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. My adoption story has been a little unique, and we do have an open adoption, so we stay in contact with his mom. He has 3 half brothers. His mom has 2 with her, and then his other brother was adopted. And I have great relationships with both of them. And it's been awesome for me to be able to tell my son his adoption story. And so I'm so excited to be here because, like I said, I just wanted to give a little bit of my story, but I think when we open it up for questions and start to let you guys ask some questions about what are your fears, or what are you thinking, or how this process worked, it is something that I highly, highly, highly recommend, and it will change your life forever.
Thank you so much for that, Sean. So I'm very excited that Sean's on. We're going to start to try to bring more dads who've gone through these processes onto the webinars, because I think they can always give a perspective that that our experts, many of whom are gay dads themselves, but just, yeah, it's a great resource to have. So without any more hesitation, we're going to just jump right into the Q&A. So again, if you have any questions for any of these paths, it can touch on anything related to single parenthood. It doesn't need to. This really is your opportunity to talk as specific as you want about your own instance and your own questions and interests in becoming a dad. So we're going to start it off with, let's see. So, okay, so this is an interesting question, Sean. I think I'll give this one to you. So the question is, how practical is single fatherhood with a full-time 9-to-5 job?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I will never say it's easy, but I don't think being a parent with even 2 parents is easy, you know? And so I think I think Bonnie said it, like having your network. I coach volleyball. I have a really good church. I have a great friend base. I felt really comfortable knowing the situations I was going to have to be in as a dad, that I had people that were there to take my back, help me, and, you know, take my back. But I will say the one part that was hard is my whole family is in Ohio. So I didn't have that family connection. It was more my connection with people outside, people at work. And so easy would never be a word I would use, but it's very doable. It is, you will be amazed at the people that reach out when you need it the most. But it's definitely challenging, but very, very doable.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I find fascinating actually is like in covering, you know, the hundreds of couples and single dads that have taken their journey into fatherhood over the years. I think in some ways, when you are a single parent, people understand that you need support and your community kind of comes around you. When you're a couple, that doesn't always happen, right? So, you know, I think the community is just as strong when you're in a relationship, but there's this sense that, you know, you're a family and you'll figure it out on your own. So in some ways, I think, you know, there is like that advantage to being a single person in this world, is that, you know, it's a very intentional process about community building. So this next question is around foster care. Bonnie, the question is there any agency, or do you have any ability to choose the age of the children that you take in through the foster care system?
That's a very popular question. So you definitely can give us sort of a list of your preferences and in terms of the children you're hoping to parent. But the more limited you are in those preferences, the harder it is to join you with a child. So if you're open to all children of all ages, of all gender identities and expressions, of all, you know, sexual orientations, then the more likely you're going to get a call regarding a child or youth to join your family. That being said, we certainly have a lot of families, perhaps the majority of our families that we work with, who are mostly interested in fostering and adopting babies, and they certainly do. Babies join their homes and become a part of their family forever.
Amazing, thank you. So Dr. Skora, this next question is for you. So someone's interested to know if there is any burden as a single father going. You touched on this a little bit, but do you find that in the matching process with surrogates, that some surrogates are less inclined to work with a single parent for any reason?
I have heard of some surrogates really wanting a couple, but it's pretty unusual. The bigger issue I've heard of is with people from other countries and them dealing with single dads from other countries like China, more issues with them getting matched. I haven't heard of any problems locally. I will say that it does seem that more of my single dads going through this process tend to have a friend or something that wants to be their directed GC. So, which, as I mentioned before, saves a lot of money, but also has other things that we've talked about with the co-parenting and all of that kind of stuff going into it as well. But I haven't noticed too much of a difficulty.
Great. And actually, let's kick that over to the foster care experience as well. Is there any sort of, in terms of getting the home study process or certified, is there any reluctance with certain types of kids to be placed in a single parent household that you're aware of, Bonnie?
Reluctance to place children in homes, no. I mean, I think we definitely are assessing each family, each parent regarding their strengths and limitations, and we certainly wouldn't want to join you with a child that perhaps you wouldn't be as successful in parenting. But I don't think other than that, if we feel that you're fully capable of being a caring, loving, and affirming parent for any child, then we wouldn't have hesitancy in joining you with that child. The only other consideration I think we might think about is where the birth family lives, because remember, in foster care, the primary goal first is reunification. So if you live, for instance, on one side of where I'm at in LA County, if you're on one side, South LA, and birth parents perhaps live somewhere more north, it may not be as feasible to place a child or join a child with you in that home, because it would be so difficult to maintain visitation between the child and the birth family. But I think, really that would be it.
Great. And Sean, in the adoption experience, did you kind of face any sort of, or were you aware of any sort of discrimination as a single dad going in this process?
No, because that was one of my questions with Molly. It was like, I'm a single, I only make this amount of money. I only do this. My house is only this big. And I will say that was probably one of the scariest there, because they didn't know. It was like the home study and you're like, this person is going to say yes or no, so you're like, but one of the biggest things that Choice Network did for me was they were just like, you have to be yourself. You have to show them who you are, why you want to be a parent, why you want to do that, and not be, because it was very nerve wracking. It was very, when you sit and think about it, you're like, this person that's coming to check my house and do all this study is the one person that could say no, and so you'd get, I will say, to be relaxed in that, even though that is a stressful time, is to try to be relaxed and be who you are and show them why, you can be a great father. That helped me at the beginning, because it was a scary process.
Great. So this next question I'm going to kick to you too, Sean. So basically the question is, how did you know you were ready to take this on by yourself?
That's a funny question. Because like I said, mine's unique because I knew someone at the adoption agency. And so I had questions, and she called one time and she's like, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Are you ready for what?" And she's like, "To be a dad, like, let's do this." And I just was like, we joked and we're like, is anyone really ready to be a parent? Straight couples that are ready, no one's ever necessarily ready and knows what it entails, because every kid's different, every family's different. And so I felt like at a time in my life where I knew who I was secure with my job. I felt like in such a great place that I was ready. During my TED Talk, I talked a lot about, owning your story and loving your story. And like, I have no regrets that I came out late and that I adopted a son late. Like, that's my story. I think everyone's is a little different. And the timing, some of my friends have 18-year-olds and I have a 5-year-old, but that's how my process worked. And you just kind of, I don't know if you ever really know, like, you're ready. But I think when it happens, I mean, I was at the hospital the minute he was born. They put him in their hands, and I knew I was supposed to be a dad at that moment, so.
Great. That's great. So I guess I'm going to frame this question a little bit differently for Bonnie and Dr. Skora. So this is everyone that's on this webinar. If you're interested in fatherhood, especially as a single gay man, you're doing the right thing, which is getting information. And the great thing about adoption, foster care, surrogacy, all these paths is that when you work with an agency, they are really there to guide you through this process and answer your questions. So often you think that, you have to do all this self-directed research and figure all this stuff out in advance. But could you talk, let's start with you, Dr. Skora, about like someone that's coming to you very fresh to the idea of surrogacy, like what kind of resources do you offer someone that's just trying to figure out like if this is for them, and how does that kind of intake process work?
Resources in terms of financial resources or in terms of
I would say
emotional resources?
Yeah, no, I'd say A to Z. So when people are they're interested in surrogacy and they want to know more about it, what kind of 101 type of things are available?
So generally, I refer them to websites, including Gays with Kids. I send them to Men Having Babies as an organization that's very involved in this process as well. There's a lot of information about surrogacy, about the IVF process. All of that is in there. Generally, if a patient makes an appointment with me, they get a free 30-minute consult where I talk through the entire medical process of IVF and creating embryos and getting a gestational carrier screened and pregnant. But that only covers a small portion of the journey, really, when you think about it. There's a whole other portion of the whole pregnancy, of the legal aspects, of the emotional aspects. All of that is outside kind of my purview. I've done a lot of school to learn how to do one thing really well, and that's what I can tell you about. But the other aspects are really important. You talk to a surrogacy agency, they do free consults as well, and they will tell you about kind of what to expect, what things you don't even think about. So in terms of that, now in terms of money, I did see someone did write a question about paying out of pocket. Does the clinic offer loan payment plans, things like that? Now, every clinic is different. Now, my clinic does not offer specifically loans. We have organizations we work with that will offer you loans and things like that. And there are, quote, like kind of insurance plans that you buy into that negotiate with clinics to give you lower prices on the entire journey. There are discount programs through organizations like Men Having Babies that help to lower costs for people as well. Those are kind of, and specifically for the Men Having Babies, it's generally dependent on your income as well. So that's important to know as well. That was part of the question as well.
Yeah. And so we have a whole chapter on how to afford surrogacy and make it more affordable to you. I think people often just assume it's completely out of reach. There's ways to break up the process and take it on a little bit more slowly. Men Having Babies is a great resource. And so definitely go check out our chapter on affording surrogacy at gayswithkids.com if you want a little more information there. But so Bonnie, how about in foster care? When someone's very new to the process, they want to learn more, what kind of 101, become a foster parent resources are there out there?
So absolutely, you will want to attend an orientation, and it just so happens that if you're in the LA County area, we have an orientation tomorrow at 6:30. So you can reach out to me, and I can set you up with that. But yeah, you're definitely going to want to start at orientation. In fact, when you adopt from foster care, you're required to participate in orientation with the FFA or the county, the placing agency, and there you're really going to learn a lot about, just kind of the introduction to what adopting from foster care is, what it will entail, what's required of you. And if you, at least with extraordinary families, you're going to get connected with our family recruitment specialist from the get. And she's going to be answering all of your questions and be in connection with you. Actually, she'll be working with you from the time she meets you, from your first inquiry all the way up until you hand in your application. And she offers support groups for all of the prospective parents going through the process of applying to adopt from foster care. And then once you do hand in your application, you get assigned an adoption or home study family assessment worker, and then they're going to be working with you throughout your whole assessment process. So there's really always somebody working with you throughout the entire time. And of course, once you get approved and a child joins your home, you're then assigned another social worker who walks alongside you on this path to parenthood. So you're never going to be without somebody to help you with resources and support. But again, from the first thing you can do is attend an orientation. That's the first step you need to take, and you'll learn a lot.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that, the initial step is often getting more information like this, and it's not a huge commitment. You're not putting down some massive down payment. There's a way to kind of enter to these processes, gingerly.
Yes.
I will say one interesting thing about foster care that differs from adoption, if that's your interest in adopting a newborn, is that foster care is a hyper local system. So again, Extraordinary Families works in LA County. In some states, it's based county by county. Some are statewide. So the first step there, if you're interested in foster care, is finding an agency within your county or state. And so with adoption and foster care, this is something you have to be, it's incredibly important for all of these paths, but to find an LGBTQ competent foster care and adoption agency is particularly important, since we have all of these, they're so-called religious freedom bills that are being passed state by state. Fortunately, not in California, but a lot of states now have laws on the books that make it legal for even tax-funded child welfare agencies to discriminate against not just LGBTQ people, but single parents, people of different faiths. So that said, there is an agency, no matter where you live, that will work with queer parents and single parents. So the Dave Thomas Foundation is a great resource if you're looking there, but even better is the All Children, All Families campaign, which is part of the Human Rights Coalition. So if you go onto HRC's website, they have the All Children, All Families campaign. Actually, maybe we'll have Bonnie tell us a little bit about the vetting process, because it's not an easy one. So all of the agencies that we're working with at Gays with Kids have been through a thorough vetting of their LGBTQ competency. So Bonnie, do you want to talk a little bit about what that process was like?
Yeah, sure. I actually am the lead person at our agency who oversees this part of our work. At Extraordinary Families, we've been working with HRC and their All Children, All Families program since 2009, and we were among one of the first agencies to be recognized as an innovator in serving LGBTQ youth and families. And it's not an easy process, as David mentioned. It requires us to adhere to a number of standards and reach a number of benchmarks to ensure that we are, in fact, inclusive and affirming, and can offer the best services possible to our LGBTQ community. We have to make sure that our policies are appropriate, our programs, our practices, everything. And we're submitting all of this work, all of the programs and all of the procedures and all of the policies. We've submitted all to HRC, and they review it all, and they let us know where we need to make improvements, or if we're doing great. And it always keeps us, every year there's something new. Every year there's something new that we can do to be even better. And I've really enjoyed this work, and I don't know what else to really say about it.
They do such a good job vetting the agencies. Like, this is something that Gays with Kids was like, maybe we should be doing this, but Human Rights Campaign is doing a fantastic job of it. So we're allowing them to do it, and just really endorsing the list that they've come up with. We've chosen to work with an even smaller group of agencies on our website if you want to go there to learn a little bit more about that. So just to kind of round out the options here for adoption, domestic infant adoption, if you're interested in adopting a newborn, many adoption agencies do work all over the country. So it's not hyper local like within the foster care system. So if you go to our partners on gayswithkids.com and find some of our agencies there, like Choice Network that Sean worked with, works all over the country. So and they will also offer 101 type trainings and info sessions for you to get more information without having to do any sort of serious level of commitment right up front. So this next question is a good one. So it's geared towards if money and career stability, I assume, is an obstacle. Okay, so if money and career is an obstacle, and so let's say you're not financially super stable, but you have great community and family support, is it realistic to start pursuing adoption? So I'll kick that to you, Sean. I think we can kind of talk about this in each of the fields.
Yeah, well, again, for me, it was just being able to afford the adoption, and I looked into loans, and there's, check your workplace. There's a lot of avenues that people don't really understand that there are out there to help with adoption. And so there's a lots of things to research, but yeah, like 1000%, I believe I was not making what I make now as a head coach, coaching. You don't go into coaching for the money, especially women's volleyball, but I now the head coach and, doing a little bit more than I was before, but I was not, that was one of my first questions with Molly and the people I sat down with there was like, okay, I make this amount, like I can, use my savings, use all this and, figured out the way to pay for the adoption, but it definitely wasn't an obstacle for me. I wasn't
great
rolling in money when I started the process.
And this, so this is a consideration for LGBTQ dads to be, parents to be, is that with surrogacy and adoption, they're not cheap processes. So this is not a barrier that's in the way of straight people who can just have a baby no matter what their income level is or whatever. So this is something that we definitely have to think about a little bit more. But there are an increasing number of resources to help offset the cost of both surrogacy and adoption. So I'll make a plug for helpusadopt.org. They do it's similar to Men Having Babies on the surrogacy side, as they provide pretty large, sizable grants to which is also income based to try to help people get over that finish line. There are a lot of adoption grant programs out there. Most of them are religiously based and will not work with LGBTQ people. Help Us Adopt has been very committed to the LGBTQ community from the beginning, so I will definitely recommend checking them out. And I think they have 3 or 4 grant cycles per year. So there's always one that will be coming up. And if their founder was on with us right now, Becky Fawcett, she would say, please apply. She wants to help work with more queer parents. So if you're interested in adoption specifically and finances are at all an issue, definitely look into that. And again, employer programs are becoming much more common. We've heard stories and we've profiled people on our site for surrogacy and adoption who have gone to their HR program department to try to see if there is any sort of benefit that will help offset some of the costs associated with becoming a parent in these ways. It doesn't exist yet, but then they've kind of lobbied for it and helped create it. So it's becoming much more common. A lot of the tech startup world, Silicon Valley companies. So increasingly people are recognizing that these are valid reasons to be providing some employer support. And then we've heard great stories of people crowdfunding for to help offset the cost of all these. So it's not easy. No, I don't think anyone's trying to sugarcoat the finances are not a consideration if you're interested in adopting a newborn or surrogacy, but that they often are not insurmountable. And I definitely would encourage people to go check out some of those stories on our website. And we, just like surrogacy, we have a whole section dedicated to how to afford adoption. So please go to our webpage and check that out as well. So let's see. So I think we more or less got through the question about, oh wait, no, so this was an interesting one. So Dr. Squire, this is directed to you. So I think you touched on, some of the complications, but advantages as well of having like a friend or someone that serve as your surrogate. And I think we could also throw egg donor into that. Can you talk about what that, some extra considerations you might have to think about?
Yeah, so generally, when you hire an anonymous egg donor or an anonymous gestational carrier, there are things that are done through that agency or through even the infertility clinic before that person is considered available even to be an egg donor or a surrogate. And when you choose a friend to fill those roles, you are responsible for getting them through that aspect. So that includes psychological screening, that includes medical screening, that includes all of those kinds of things that are necessarily, we've already done on the front end, which is why it's expensive, to be honest, because that's already been done and included in the price. Legal contracts are also another thing. When you're dealing with an egg donor that is a friend of yours, you're going to be responsible for arranging for a lawyer for that person as well as for yourself. You can't have the same lawyer, okay? And that aspect, when we have an internal egg donor, we have 80 egg donors that we work with routinely that are local to our clinic, okay? That's what we call internal egg donors. When you use one of those people as your egg donor, we have a boilerplate contract that we use for that person because they are used all the time and they're an anonymous egg donor. So you're not paying that fee. It's included kind of in the fee you're paying for the egg donor, but in essence, we're breaking down these things and it becomes your responsibility, right? Because you are being your own egg donor agency or your own gestational carrier agency because these friends of yours, they're doing good things for you, but that you don't have the kind of the structure around you that's doing all these things for you to get the process moved through. Now, some people, when they use a known gestational carrier, they actually will still use a surrogacy agency to guide them through the process, but you will pay a lot of money for that. But that does help to make it more streamlined in terms of all the legal, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. Some extra considerations there. But again, we have lots of really interesting profiles on our website about people that have worked with family members and friends, and also people that have tried to and it hasn't worked out for any number of reasons. So definitely some interesting considerations there. So we have a question about how young is too young or too old to be a single parent. So Sean, why don't I throw this one to you if you have any sort of thoughts on this? And then obviously if in foster care and surrogacy, if there's like specific considerations for super young or older dads to be.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm a big component on everyone has a story, and it's all about your story and what works for y'all. Because I think if you're 22 and have a great job and you're ready to be a parent, I have friends that did that, both gay and straight, and so I don't think there's an age as long as you are ready for the challenges and mature enough to handle all that comes with being a parent. Also, I didn't feel at 37, 38 that I was too old either. I think everyone has, I knew I wanted to be a dad. And so to me, it didn't matter what age it happened. It was my goal and my dream. And so that's how it worked for me just later in life. And so I don't think age matters.
Great. So in foster care, there are some specific requirements at times, right, to become a certified foster parent?
Yeah, so you have to, at least for extraordinary families, we like you to be able to at least be able to rent a car. So we ask that you be at least 25. So if you needed to, for some reason, rent a car, you could. But as far as age, as you get older, no, there's really not an age limit, as long as you, again, have the ability to care and love and are healthy to care for a child. I think, we have parents now in their 60s, 50s, 60s. It's pretty common. And, a lot of grandparents too go through this process to foster children, to help children in need. So yeah, 25 at least is the youngest here at Extraordinary Families. But I think other agencies work with parents who are 21. But again, we like you to be able to rent a car if you need to.
So my understanding is that's similar with the domestic infant adoption process. I don't think age factors in a ton. That changes though if you're interested in adopting internationally. A lot of countries do place some limits on how old or young you can be. But there are very few countries that will be willing to work with LGBTQ parents. But the ones that do, there are some age requirements there. So Dr. Skora, age obviously factors into some decision-making when you're pursuing surrogacy, if you want to touch on those.
Yeah, this is something that's going to be very individualized to whatever clinic you go to be honest. ASRM, or governing body, doesn't have very great guidelines on the upper age limit. Lower age, it's pretty rare that I see single fathers going through this process who are under the age of 30, to be honest, mostly because of the cost, and just lifestyle, et cetera. But we routinely will see patients in their 40s. That's very common. 50s, less so, but it does happen. So it's kind of on a case by case, and every center is going to be completely different. Some centers won't even speak to you. Some will. Over the age of 50, it really just depends, And I think when I'm talking to an intended father over the age of 50 who's single, my question really for that person is, what's your plan for this baby if you unfortunately don't live to the point where that person is graduating from high school? That's what we worry about creating children, is that there isn't a plan in place for that child to make it all the way to adulthood, right? So a man who is single, who's in his 70s, that's a real big concern. 50s, less so nowadays, but it really just depends case by case.
Okay, great. Okay, Sean, I'm going to give you the last word for a couple questions. I'm going to throw two at you. So the first is an interesting one. Someone that is interested in knowing for Mother's Day coming up, how do you explain or plan to explain or talk about Mother's Day to being a single dad? And then the other question, which is a good one, is there anything you wish you would have known about the adoption process before jumping in? Like if you could tell your younger self, what would that be?
The Mother's Day thing is, for me, we have an open adoption. And so we have a relationship with his mom. I've, as crazy as it sounds, have been very open with him, even at a younger age. All the research I've done and stuff I've read, him knowing his story. He obviously doesn't look like me. He's Black, I'm white. And, I wanted him to know he does have a mom. There was a lot early on at daycare, things like that. Kids were crying for mom. Not everyone was crying for their dad. He was crying for his dad. And then he was like, wait, what's this mom thing? Then for a while, he thought all women were called mom, and so he just turned 5 in December, and it's crazy how it works. And he just knows. He knows I'm his dad. He knows he has a mom. We send her flowers for Mother's Day. We FaceTime her. And so I think for me, it's been being open with him and explaining, obviously in a way that he understands at his young age, and it makes it a little easier. We do, there's actually National Birth Mothers Day. We honor that for everything. I think with open adoption, it's really been one of those I've seen and read. I thought, again, Choice Network did a very good job of giving me everything that could happen during the process. And, we're going to prepare you for the worst because it is emotional. There is a lot that goes through it. And just being vulnerable with her and knowing, like, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be a dad. If it wasn't for her, my dream would have never came true. And so I think there are parts that are hard with open adoption. And, but I will say with all the stuff I did beforehand, I talked to people who were adopted, and it was at a time where there was no open adoption. And, their big thing was like, the only reason I'm looking for my mother or father is I just want to know. I just want to know. I don't need a relationship. I don't need to go live. I didn't need all that. I just want to know. And so that was very eye-opening to me, and helped ease my pain and my struggles with, is open adoption really what I want to do? Because I did fear that a little bit. And so it's unique. It's awesome. I think, like I said, he's 5, but he kind of just gets it. He knows he has a mom. He knows he has brothers. They're the gay couple that adopted his brother. Called yesterday was my birthday. They FaceTimed me for my birthday, and he talked to his brother for a little bit, and just that relationship. But it's not. There are times and challenges where he will cry for his mom. He will, do some things. He's very smart. He also knows how to use that to his advantage at times. But I'm very blessed that he's smart in that way. But I just think having that, the talk with him, and again, like I said, explaining to him age appropriate what's going on has really, really helped. And for me, it's really opened up to be able to talk to him about race and things that are going on in our country with that. And so it's crazy to think that he's 5 and we're having those conversations, but we really do. And so that's how we handle Mother's Day and some of the holidays. We see them at Christmas. We do Christmas with their family. It's just a really awesome, like I said, I have also seen the opposite end of that, where it's open adoption and the gay couple or gay doesn't want the relationship with the mom or doesn't want that. And I think that just causes more that struggle when they're older, and when they, I think he's really gonna respect and know he's allowed to have a relationship with his mom. He's allowed to know that, again, if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be in this position. So there's definitely things out there to read, and kind of like one of the big things for me was talking to other people, and just random, even talking about going through the adoption process. I met 5 people in my circle that I didn't even know were adopted. They were like, do you know I was adopted? Did you know? And I was like, holy crap, like, this is crazy. And so being able to pick their brain a little bit was amazing. And that second question about, is there anything I would do different or what? I know. I was very, very lucky. Molly and Choice Network does a really, really good job. I was very vulnerable, and I said, I want to know what's the worst thing. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to pay this. I'm going to do this. Like, I want to know. And, it was good to know what's the worst thing, they tell you, you could be at the hospital and they decide this doesn't happen, you've got to be prepared. But I would rather be prepared and know that up front than to go through some of that. So I literally, one, meeting just said, everything, tell me everything that, could go wrong. Tell me the worst case scenario, And so it's hard to hear that, and it's not what you want to hear, but it helped me go in with more of an open heart, knowing like, yes, I want to be a dad. It's not on my timeline right now. It's on someone else's timeline and someone else's. And so I don't think I would have done anything different or anything. I was pretty good up front with asking a lot of hard questions and, kind of being vulnerable with some of that stuff. And I think as long as your agency is up front with you, I was lucky again. I'm friends with Molly, so I know her, but I also worked with other people in her company and wanted to not just I love her, but I wanted to also hear from the other people in the company because I was friends with her about some things that I was like, I want to make sure I know what I'm doing. And it's not just, oh, my friend Molly thinks this is a great idea, And so, but the more I've, referred people to them, they were just like, oh my gosh, like she told us everything. She told us how it's going to be. And that's my biggest thing is you just want to be prepared because all the other stuff about being a parent, I really think that I'm a better dad because of all the stuff I went through to go through the process to do adoption, And so I think it's really prepared me for all the other stuff. And the unique thing too is that they're all different, And so
I'm glad you brought up openness because I think there's a lot of interesting parallels with all of these paths, the relationships that you develop along the way for any of the paths available to queer men. Which actually, might be a good subject for a future webinar, because these are actually my favorite ones. We have representatives from each of the paths available to us. So just as a FYI to everyone watching, we're going to be going dark with our webinars for the month of April to revamp them. And then we're going to be launching a new in May. But so please do, we'll be promoting this on our Instagram and our social media. If you're not already following us there, please do. Please go to gayswithkids.com and our becoming section to see all the great resources featuring the experts you see here that will answer a lot of the questions you have. If I wasn't able to get to your question, I'm sorry, please email us at dads@gayswithkids.com and I'll find someone to answer your question if I'm not able to myself. And the person that just asked for Sean's TED Talk, please email me. I'll make sure that I get that to dads@gayswithkids.com. I can't thank Dr. Daniel Skora, Bonnie Sharp, and Sean Huiet enough for being on here. This was a really enriching conversation for me. I hope it was for all of our attendees. And we will see you at our next webinar.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.